What's going on, guys? So I have to show you something that is so amazing on ChatGPT. So I admit I was pretty late to really using ChatGPT. I of course knew the power and the potential of it, but I kind of asked it a couple of random questions that I didn't really need the answers to at that time. I was just trying it out. But the other day I had a pretty complex and specific coding situation, and oh my god. So first, let me show you the basic idea of how you can use ChatGPT. You go to the chat here and you can ask it something like, how do I make an API call with Axios in React? It'll tell you, give you some code along with its explanation. Have you install the library, import it, make your API call. An example with a GET request shows you using local state here, putting it in a use effect, a little async function. Your try, you get your data, or your catch, you get your error, and it explains this. And we use the use effect hook to make the API call when the component mounts, blah blah blah. Super helpful, even iterating over the data and displaying it on the front end. Very awesome. You can also ask it something more complex, like how do I use Redux Toolkit in React? Which obviously is a little more complex, but still. Install, configure store, creating your counter reducer, create a Redux slice. In Redux Toolkit, a slice is a collection of Redux-related logic for a specific feature or part of your application. You give it the provider, pass in the store, and then in the component that needs access to the Redux store, you can use the useSelector and useDispatch hooks from React Redux to read data from your store and dispatch actions. Here's an example. So you're importing useSelector and useDispatch. Import those actions from the counter slice. And you have your useSelector, which you're assigning the state to, and the useDispatch to dispatch the action. And then you can be like, show me an example of dispatching an action. So if it doesn't give you exactly what you want, you can give it more prompts. So there's that dispatch, useDispatch being saved to that. And then you have these different functions, dispatch these different actions. You can put them in an on-click event, handle increment, handle decrement. In this example, we import the useSelector and useDispatch hooks from React Redux, as well as the increment and decrement actions from CounterSlice. The useSelector hook allows us to extract the counter state from the Redux store, and the useDispatch hook gives us access to the dispatch function. Inside the component, we define the two functions, handle increment and handle decrement, that dispatch the increment and decrement actions respectively, using the dispatch function. When the buttons are clicked, these functions will be called, resulting in the corresponding action being dispatched to the Redux store. The current value of the counter state is displayed in the component's JSX, and the buttons trigger the dispatch of actions when clicked. And now you'll never have to watch my video on Redux Toolkit. But there's a more specific situation that I came across, and this is what blew my mind. Now, it's so specific to the situation that I had trouble with that I have to show you that before you understand the question or prompt that I give ChatGPT. So in my recent videos, we've been building out this music talk app. It's an app like Facebook, but you talk about music. Make sure you like and subscribe. In React, I have an array of usernames displayed on the site. This is so the user can add the user as a friend. When I click a username, I want to make an API call to our server and database, and then if successful, change the text from the username to say added. So I go to add them as a friend, it says added. And this can happen to different usernames in the list, and I want to update the list as needed. So then in the code, I have some local state of an array that I called added. And then when I display the usernames, I'm passing in the username and the index. And when you click to add a friend, you click on their username. It calls this add friend function where we're passing in the username and index. If it's successful, we add the index to the array, and we also spread in any other index numbers of any of the other usernames that were added. And that's how we're updating those. So then I call, after mapping over the usernames, I call this includes method on the array and pass in the index. So it checks for each one, and if added is true, it'll say added. If it's false, it'll display the username. So it works, but I was stuck on this for a while before I came to this conclusion, and took a while to work out properly. So now I'll show you the prompt that I gave ChatGPT and the response that it gave me. In React, this was my prompt to ChatGPT. In React, I have an array of usernames displayed on the site. When I click a username, I want to run a function and then change the text from the username to say added instead. This added text should show for any username on the list where the function was ran successfully after clicking on the usernames. How should I implement this dynamic list of usernames? And I just said function instead of API call because I didn't want to get into all that, but essentially the same thing. And then it gives me some local state as an example, and you have your different users, and then added is all false by default. You have your handle click function that runs when they click on the username. And it says run your function here, so it even comments inside the code. Run your function here and update the state accordingly. For example, you can use an API call or perform any desired action. So they even said you could do an API call here, which is exactly what I was doing. If the function is successfully executed, mark the username as added. Assuming the function returns a promise, which mine does, you can do something like this. So you get your function on a successful response. And so they pass in the index as well, and they're just calling added true. So they're doing it a little different than mine, but kind of like theirs better actually. And then instead of doing that includes and two different like renderings, they just do a span, and then if user.added is true, say added. If not, do the username. So a cleaner implementation than what I did, which is awesome. And then yeah, they fully explain it here. In the code above, the initial state of usernames is an array of objects containing the name of the user and a boolean added, which is set to false by default. This flag will be updated to true when the function is successfully executed. The handle click function takes the index of the clicked username as a parameter. It runs your desired function, for example, an API call, which is awesome, and updates the state accordingly. If the function is successful, it sets the added flag of the respective username to true. In the JSX code, we map over the usernames array and render each username along with a button. The onClick handler of the button is set to call handle click with the corresponding index. Clicking the button triggers the function execution and updates the state, causing a re-render of the component. The rendered username will show added if the added flag is true for that user. Otherwise, it will show the original username. So that is insane, and they completely nailed it, and really would have helped me a lot if I did that originally instead of trying to work through it myself. So it's awesome that when you get stuck in the middle of coding something, you can still ask ChatGPT about your very specific problem you're stuck on and get real help with it. You might have to touch it up a tiny bit to work precisely with the rest of your code, but it should definitely help you get unstuck and get past your issue. It's like having a senior developer always available to you on chat from anywhere at any time. I'll definitely have to experiment more with it and keep this in mind. I'll make another video after I hit another gem. I highly recommend you keep it in mind too. In fact, you should let us know in the comments what situations it's helped you with. That'll be cool to see what other people have done with it. We can all learn from each other and get good ideas from each other. Feel free to like and subscribe for more, and thank you very much for watching. I will catch you in the next one.